Hi, I'm Beth,
Hi, I'm Ashley.
and we're Shelf Care.
Today we're going to be going over our Kindle Unlimited recommendations. So take out a paper, pen, and write down your stuff.
So, if you don't know, Kindle Unlimited is something that Amazon provides, and you pay.
I think it's like $11.99.
Yeah, it's like $12 or something a month, and you get access to their library of books.
And they actually have a really good selection now.
Better than when we started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's very exciting, and it's really honestly not that expensive.
I don't think it is for how many books you're getting, honestly, because books are pretty expensive now.
Yeah.
I think maybe you'd pay like at least $15, $16 per book, and I mean that's less than what you're paying per month, and you're getting so many.
Yeah. I especially like it. We'll go over this for the romances because some of the romances, they're good, but you're never going to read them again. Mm-hmm. They were just kind of like an easy read.
Yeah, it's not like worth you actually buying.
Exactly.
Putting it on your bookshelf.
Yeah, I think that's what I use Kindle Unlimited for, I think, mostly.
Right. So the first one, just because we talked about this in our last video, is The One by John Mars. Mm-hmm. If you haven't seen that video, we just posted it last week. It is kind of a romancy thriller, mm-hmm. and I think it's a good book, but I don't think that that's a book that I would like go out and buy, you know?
Yes. I definitely am glad I didn't spend money on it, but I don't think it was like a waste of time to read.
Yeah. I think it was pretty good. If you're really, it's basically about a company has a find your perfect match. You send your information, they take a DNA sample, this and that, and they tell you who your DNA is perfectly matched with. And so it's just kind of a crazy story. It has several different life perspectives, and you're kind of seeing how they played out. Some of them are married, some of them are single, and it's a pretty good story.
It's definitely something different. Mm-hmm. It's not a romance and it's not a thriller.
Yeah. It's kind of like in between, like suspenseful, I guess, kind of. Yeah. But it's a good one if you don't have anything to read.
Definitely something different. Mm-hmm. Another one, so Twisted Love. We're actually going to make a video on this.
Yes.
Anna Hong, I think that's how you say it. She has several different series. This one is probably my favorite. And this one's kind of fun because you finished it, right?
I did read the first one. Okay. I want to go back and read the second book.
So this one's kind of fun because it's a romance. Mm-hmm. It's got a little bit of spice. Well, would you say a little bit?
I mean,
I would say medium spice.
It's kind of spicy. I will say they have some pretty smutty scenes. Like, it's not the entire plot or the entire book, but when they do have a couple scenes, like, they are pretty smutty.
Pretty smutty.
I feel like.
It's been a little bit, I've got to refresh my memory on some of it. And I think the trope that I would say is best friend, brother's best friend.
Brother's best friend. So if you like that hot rich guy type of thing,
And it's a quick read. I think it's like 400 pages.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty good book, I would say. Kind of just like if you're, I don't know what I kind of use my romances books is kind of like reading between like
palate cleansers.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Variation by Rebecca Yarros.
I really liked that book. That was my first contemporary romance by her, and she has quite a bit on Kindle Unlimited actually. Mm-hmm. That if you want to go back and look up all of her romance books on there. But I think it's a really good book.
I really liked it. I recently recommended it to one of our other friends, and she read it, and she said it was the perfect palate cleanser after Onyx Storm.
I think it's perfect. It's not like smutty, but it has enough like life issues with a little bit of romance.
Yeah.
You know?
I really enjoyed it.
Good characters, and I think what I liked mostly about it is kind of like the main character did a different job that you don't really read in books.
Yes.
You know? So
and I also loved that it was a grumpy sunshine and the girl was grumpy.
Yeah.
That was different. Mm-hmm. So I liked that.
And if you love ballet, that really does fit into this book.
Yeah. I feel like I don't want to say I learned a lot about ballet, but it definitely
introduction
had a lot of stuff about ballet. So.
I've never really
paid any attention
to it, so it was nice to read about. I think I have like every Frida McFadden book on here that I've read. So any of her books, I'll name a couple of my favorite ones. The X, Never Lie, I think is my favorite book by Frida. All of her books are on Kindle Unlimited. Even her new releases, she just had a new one in January,
The
The
Crash.
Crash. So any of her books are 10 out of 10 read, really fast paced, keep you entertained, and they're all pretty good. So I think just for her books alone, it's kind of worth it, the membership.
She's a thriller, so I feel like she's a good introductory thriller author.
Because it's not too much.
Yeah, it's not too much. I read her, she was actually my first thriller, which we won't talk about that book. But all of her other books have been good. I read Never Lie. I finally finished it.
You did.
And it was really good.
I really liked that one.
I want to say The Housemaid. That's what they're turning into a movie. And we are going to do a podcast about The Housemaid in the future, hopefully before the movie comes out. And I think that one will be something that everyone will really like, just because they can relate it to the movie.
Yeah. All three of it's 3 books in that series, and they're all on Kindle. So they're pretty good quick reads.
Let's see here. This one is kind of a guilty pleasure read. The Knock 'Em Out series.
I really liked that book. When I first got Kindle Unlimited, I think that series was like one of the first ones that I read.
It was really good. I think that was one of the first ones I read on Kindle Unlimited as well. Little sidebar here, but what would you rate them? So books 1, 2, and 3, which one is your favorite?
It's kind of, I don't know. I'm kind of between 1 and 3. I did like the third storyline more, but I don't know. I just, being introduced to that world, I really loved the first book for that. But I do say that the third book, like their romance together, I think was my favorite.
But so there's lots of romances that have multiple books, but you don't have to read them in order. I feel like you do have to read these in order. And they are long. But you fly through. I flew through them.
I did too. I don't think that it took me long.
It's not a hard read. It's just good. I think the third was my favorite, and then the first, and then the second.
So the first one is kind of like Grumpy Sunshine vibes. Second one, kind of like a softer main male character, I would say. Wasn't my
strong
favorite.
Female lead.
Very strong female lead if you like those type of books. But I would say read them in order. And then third one, obviously, like hot criminal billionaire type of thing. So,
and I think that's why we leaned towards the third one so much. Because
I don't know, that storyline's always interesting. Yeah. You know?
Billionaire in a suit, count me in.
Yeah, best friends, or not best friends, but, you know, from childhood, sweethearts.
Second chance romance. Yeah, for sure.
I would say this is, okay, so this is one of my favorite books. And it's A Love Letter to Whiskey by Candy Stainer. When I will say, I wish I knew the TikTok girl that I saw this video on, because she was the one that made me read it. It was like way back when I first started getting back into reading. I saw this TikTok, looked it up. It wasn't on Kindle yet, and it now is. So I'm like so sad that I didn't have it on Kindle when I read it. But it's just such a good, like, you know, romance. Just like kind of like back and forth, kind of trying again, best friends to lovers type of thing. If you love like on and offs, breakups, great book. Goes through a couple years before things finally.
I love the best friends to lovers. That was super fun because of the way they did it. It wasn't just like they decided to be together.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of stuff they have to go through. It's very toxic.
Yeah, extremely.
You know, I don't know. It's just very entertaining.
And you just don't see, you don't really see what's coming.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of not thrillery vibes, but it's just unexpected. You're like, well, that's not what I thought this was going to, you know?
Yeah, I really liked that one.
I think if any of the books that you guys should read, this is like the one that you're like, okay, these girls know what they're talking about.
Yeah, if you like romance, that's the book for you. I loved it. I think you actually got it for me for Christmas.
Yeah.
2 years ago?
Yeah, and then you finally read it.
Yes, yeah, it was fantastic. Obviously, Fourth Wing. I think almost all of Rebecca Yarros's books are on there.
Which is new, because when I first got Kindle Unlimited, she was not on there.
Yeah.
And now I know Fourth Wing and Iron Flame are on there. I'm not sure if Onyx Storm is on there yet, because
I bet it's not. I bet it won't be for a while, if at all. They may end up taking off fourth wing.
I'm sure, because they go
storm.
back and forth with books that they
Yeah.
let you read, which is
Yeah.
weird. But
So on the fantasy, well, I feel like we don't have to talk about Fourth Wing that much. I feel like everybody pretty much knows
who Fourth Wing is.
War College. I mean, fantasy.
You know what's going on.
Fantastic. On the fantasy realm, Crowns of Nyaxia, did I say that right?
Yeah.
By Clarissa Broadbent was super good. I think
yeah.
There's 3 books in the series now. I read the first 2. The third one came out later, I believe. And I haven't read that one.
I don't think I read the third one.
I don't think that either one of us read it.
Mm.
Because The Serpent and a Court of Night is the first one. But this one is...
It's more vampire than anything.
It's a vampire fantasy. Mm-hmm. She's not, though. The main character is not.
No.
Right. That's the whole point.
That's the whole point. She's human.
She's pretty much, she's taken in by the vampires. And basically this is just her taking her place in her court.
Basically. So her father is the main head of vampire
he's
household,
like the king of the vampires.
And he got this human that you learn how they came to be together, not together, but how she became under his care type of thing. And she has to go through all these trials, and it's just a pretty good story.
It's
different.
Really fun. I like the trials. The trials were super fun, and obviously there's romance involved. I think it's really good. I read it different. After I finished the Sarah J. Maas universe because I was in such a book hangover. I had read all of Throne of Glass and then all of A Court of Thorns and Roses. Well, I mean, all of them. I don't know what we were calling those.
I guess
ACOTAR, yeah. So I'd read all the ACOTAR, all of Throne of Glass, and I was in this rut, and it really brought me out of my rut, I feel like. It's really good. And for a Kindle Unlimited, I think I rated it 5 stars.
I think I did too at the time, which
now I would probably rate it 4 stars.
I think I've gotten better with my ratings.
Yeah.
But I still think it's a pretty good book. I don't know if I'd reread it, maybe if I gave it enough time, but I think it's just such a good book to get you into it.
I'd have to forget what happened, I think, because the twists and turns are what make it for me. But yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah. One that I will say, if you're more into YA, is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. It is a duology, so that's the first one. I can't remember what the second one is called, but I mean, you can look it up after you read the first one, and it'll be right next to it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of they say fantasy, but to me it's not really that fantasy. It's kind of like mythical gods type of thing, but they're not the biggest play. I mean, they kind of are, but
it's very light.
Yeah.
The fantasy portion, and I feel like I can say this because I think it's on the back of the book, is she's talking to someone through a typewriter.
It's like a magical typewriter.
So you write a note and it ends up at the other typewriter. And I think that is the main fantasy portion.
Which it is kind of like romancy.
And this is where it's very YA because
I don't think they ever even kiss.
It's supposed to be enemies to lovers.
Which they're not really enemies.
So they were never enemies, really. They were co-workers that kind of competitors. And then they were writing letters to each other unknowingly. And then it just kind of comes together.
I will say I did read the second. I was really into the first one. Once I read the second one, it wasn't my favorite. But I think I'm just not that big into YA. But if you do love YA, I feel like, or if you're introducing maybe a niece or a younger person into reading, this would be a good story.
I think so too. Let's see.
Going into keeping in the fantasy.
Oh, yes.
One book that I read recently is Never by Jessa Hastings, and I love anything by Jessa Hastings, but this book, I need you to read this book.
Yeah, I need to read it.
And it's on Kindle Unlimited now. It's called Never. It's kind of, I think I've talked about this in a couple of videos. It's basically a take on Peter Pan world, and it's just so good. Peter Pan, the Hook, they're kind of enemies, but it isn't like the original Hook. It's his son. So it's a younger version, and just kind of seeing.
That's fun.
And it's not even like windy, it's like generations down. You got to read it. So basically Peter Pan always goes to the window, you know, like you know the story. But now it's like generations down, and he doesn't have like the best memory. He always thinks like, oh, this is windy, but it's not. Like the grandmother was windy, the great grandmother. You know, it's just kind of like they all go through this thing, which is kind of the weird part for me was that the older woman in the family would be like, no, you need to keep your window unlocked for when Peter comes, and you're like, why are you letting a random man come into the 16-year-old window? But you know, it's just such a good story, and I really think it kind of gives me a love letter to whiskey vibes.
Really?
Because it's just kind of like toxic romancy. But I mean, that's Jessa Hastings.
True. I mean, so, yeah, Magnolia Park's universe. But
I think if you're kind of bored, and this is such a great book.
So, I mean, let's just keep this fantasy train rolling. Another duology that I absolutely loved, and I was burned by the duologies with Divine Rivals because I didn't like it. And it wasn't because it wasn't a good book. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
So One Dark Window and
I loved One Dark Window.
Two Twisted Crowns is the second. So good.
So good. And I loved that it was just two. Like, perfect.
It was just two and it ended. There was no big cliffhanger. Like, yeah, it was just two and it was great. I do love the magical element with the cards. We have a video on it. It was just something that I'd never seen before. Yeah. Like, that was so fun. It's basically a deck of cards, and they all have magical elements, and they're hunting them all down. Like, there's obviously more to the book, and there's romance to the book. I don't think there's any smut, though, so it's very clean.
It's very, I wouldn't say YA, but this was a book that didn't like...
It didn't feel YA.
Yeah, and you didn't need that
It was
smut
just
or anything.
fiction.
Yeah.
Which I like, you know, it's not all about the romance, and usually I like my romance with my fantasy, and I didn't even really notice.
I was like so interested just in the magical elements
and stuff.
It was super fun. Super good, quick reads, both of them, and they're both on Kindle. Yeah. So it's a really great if you're starting into fantasy, because it's a different take. You don't need your hero always like, you know, rescuing you and type of thing. So it's a great series.
I really did like it. Something that has tons of smut. King of Wrath by Anna Hung. This is another one of her series. So the thing about her, I can't read her books one after another.
Yeah, because I get bored.
They're too close. They're too similar.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
That's why I just use them like as cleansing.
But yeah, so King of Wrath was my favorite. I've read all three, but I had to read them months apart.
Yeah.
And the same for Twisted Love. I've only read the first one, but I'm going to read the others. I'm just waiting.
You're just building yourself up, you know, like so you can forget the first one a little bit. So it's not like too like cliche.
You have to cleanse that out of your system.
I think about her, it's very smut, and both of the series, because I've read the first book to each of the two series that I've seen by her. I'm sure she has more.
She does.
But the series are just kind of like, so it's a group of friends, and it's every friend.
Yes.
You know, which you do like. You like to be in the world, but I mean...
You never see the friends again, though. And that's something I don't like. So in Knock 'Em Out, they were all around in all the books. Yeah. We met them all, and once we met them, they stayed in the book. And so I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. In the other ones, you're like, whoa, I thought you were best friends.
Yeah. And then in these... the people that they talked about in the book before are gone, done. So I didn't love that, but the books each individually, they're really good.
They're good. I would keep them. She's a good author.
A little bit more on like a romancy, smutty side of things. One thing that I really love is hockey romance. I've talked about it before. It's a little bit of a guilty pleasure, but I feel like Elle Kennedy does a really good job. The two best ones, in my opinion, are Briar U, and then I can't remember the other one. It's not her newest ones, because I mean they're smutty, but they're not overly like they're not like embarrassing to read in public. But her newest series is really smutty, so the level of spice depending on what you want to read. they're all hockey romances. They're all each individual group of books, series of books. They all have the same friends. The friends are there the whole time. It's just a fun read, and you can read them one after the other, or you can wait.
Yes,
I mean, I read them. I devoured them all, but I think they're really good. She also has a couple of beach romances that were super fun in the summer. They're all in Kindle Unlimited, and I really enjoyed them. I don't think you've read El Kennedy
I
yet.
haven't.
I think you would like the beach romances better
than
the hockey.
I'm just like, not that I don't read. I don't know. I don't really read a lot of like smutty books.
Yeah.
But there's just so much on my list just to, just to when I eventually will get there.
Yeah. I will say she writes smut well. It's not embarrassing to read.
It's not like you want to skim over it.
Yeah. I mean, you still skim. I still skim some parts. But like she just, I don't know, she writes it well. It's not awkward. It's not cheesy. And that's why I really like her stuff. And then she has a good story.
Yeah.
So,
Keeping on with the smut train, a recent series I've started reading is Addicted to You by Christy Ritchie. I will say it is, it's smutty, but not like, I don't want to say it's smutty. Like it is, but it isn't, like it's not really a book that like tells you like, it's based off the main character has a sex addiction, but it's not like it goes into details what she does with her partner. So it's kind of like hard to be like it's smutty, but it's not.
I don't think I wouldn't call it smutty, actually.
It's just kind of like about sex.
Yeah. Which is a weird topic. The back of the book literally, she's a sex addict and her best friend's an alcoholic. And
they just have a very strange kind of like relationship. The first book I liked just because it was kind of like best friends kind of realizing that they actually have feelings for each other because they were kind of like fake dating for a while. So I really liked the first one. I did read the second one. It wasn't as good as the first, and I'm currently reading the third. It's been a couple months now. And I'm just like,
so that should tell you all that you need to know.
I do want to finish it, but it's just like I made the mistake of reading them like too close together. Maybe if I would have come back like after reading a couple books, I think I would have been more into it. But I do think the first one's really good. And then maybe if you wait a couple, go back and read it, the series.
So, I think I will say Elsie Silver, her Chestnut Springs series, which is Reckless, Heartless.
I haven't read those.
That one I feel like was really good. I really enjoyed it. I liked the male main characters. They weren't cringy. It wasn't super, super smutty. Her second series that we read, I think we only read the first one. Wild Love.
Yeah. Wild Love. That's the only Elsie Silver book I
was a little disappointed.
And I don't know, it was new and very popular on TikTok. So that's the reason I read it, that I was just like, oh my gosh, kind of like trying to hop on, like, let me see what these people are saying. And to me, it was just very overhyped. Like, I'm just not, I want romance. I want a story. I want plot. I don't want.
It was straight smut. In my opinion. But
some people like that.
They are super popular on Kindle Unlimited, so I felt like we should put that in there because other people do really like them. The first series, Chestnut Springs, much better than the other one, in my opinion. She has several, though.
She does have a lot.
And they're all on Kindle.
They're all on Kindle, so if you do happen to like one, give her other books to try.
Yeah.
I will say one fantasy book that we did not mention, which is a recent read for both of us, is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. It is honestly a really good book. I think it has a lot of elements to it, kind of like vampire, fae type of book with kind of like not necessarily trials, but just kind of a lot of different things that you'll see. And I think it's a really good written book. I rated it 5 stars, and I'm kind of picky when it comes to fantasy.
Yes.
So I think it was really good if you guys are getting into fantasy or just need a fantasy book to read.
Yeah.
And it's on Kindle.
If you've read Sarah J. Maas, I feel like
you'd like it.
Yeah. Obviously, I don't know that any author is ever going to surpass Sarah J. Maas.
It's just it just keeps your attention the whole time. I was kind of worried the first 2 chapters just because it kind of was very similar to Powerless, if you read that, by Lauren. I want to say Roberts.
Yes.
I did not like that book.
I DNF'd it, and I don't ever DNF.
It was just, and I know it's YA, but it was just like, I read that book and other books, you know, it was kind of repetitive for me. So this one, I was like, oh, I hope it's not the same. But it was just like the first kind of chapter that they were a bit similar. But after that, it changes completely. So I was pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
So give that book a try.
There's a lot of books on Kindle Unlimited. There's a lot on our list to read. I don't think we put any of our TBRs on here because we can't really recommend it.
Yeah.
But I just think it's so fun. All of these series, even if they're like little palate cleansers, they're super fun. They were fun to read the first time. It's almost something like you kind of wish you could read it for the first time again, but you don't want to read it a second time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that y'all really enjoy it. I think that was all the books we had, though.
If you guys want us to read any of your recommendations, let us know, and we'll definitely try and make a video out of it.
Yes, we are open to any recommendations. We'll see you next time.
Bye.